Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NOVAcast. This is Josh Horton, and I'm joined today by my good friend Van Claud. He is the sales manager for the decorative landscape industry here at Nova. Van, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here, Josh.
So I think this will be a good one. You've got quite a bit of experience in the let's call it the mulch and soil industry. It's a big industry for us here at Nova. I'm excited to dive in. Let's get right to it. Give the listeners here a little bit of an overview about yourself and your experience in this industry. I know you've been in it for just a few years, right?
Yeah, just a few. Actually, I started in this industry in 1975, and have moved through the years through a different company here and there. But basically, I've been with Nova now since 1995. So been a great career so far.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about what those systems looked like in 1975. I mean, compared to now in 2023, right? I mean, it's
as you can imagine, it's quite a bit of difference. In 1975, there were no robots, there were no automatic palletizers. Basically, it was a machine. A person hung a bag on the machine. It filled the bag. Another person grabbed the bag and sealed it, and then most of the time, two people were stacking on a pallet guide, just a pallet guide, and everything was moved with a forklift from basically one station to the next, and bags per minute rate back then were about 12 to 13 bags a minute.
That's about half, right, of what we're seeing now. So that's pretty cool to look back at where you were when you started versus now you're selling systems that do upwards of 20-25 bags a minute. So that's got to be pretty cool for you.
It's been remarkable to watch it happen. It really is, and the customers they've been forced to become more efficient, and the manufacturers have seen this coming. So, they work hand in hand, and so they're able to package millions of bags a year and put out a lot of mulch.
Yeah.
And so
let's back up back to your start again. How'd you get started in this industry? Way back in 75.
Well, actually, out of college, I started working with a local company. I was living in Franklin, Virginia, and there was a company that built logging skidders. And I went to work for that company and was a salesman for them. And I actually had a cousin that worked for another company that was involved in making the manual bagging machinery, and that company looked really strong to me. So I mentioned to him if it was ever open, let me know. So he did, and I applied for a job and actually started working for the company and got my first start with the mulch and soil industry.
Awesome. So, fast forward to today, right? There are a lot of these big companies out there who are, like you said, doing millions of bags of mulch a year. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing with your customers now? One, that we help solve for here at Nova, right? Or two, just their overall, problems, right? Whether it's labor shortage or, hard to forecast, because I know we had a few big years, right? With, people were working in their yards during COVID and stuff like that. So what are the challenges that your customers are dealing with right now?
Well, I think you mentioned it. Labor is the biggest challenge now. The labor pool is small. You have to hire 35 to keep one. So getting the right people for this job is it's difficult. It's not a great environment to work in. You're dealing with cold temperatures, hot temperatures, dusty conditions, muddy conditions. So you have all those to work with, and so it's a challenging job for my customers to keep employees to run this machinery, even though it's automatic. It still require a certain amount of oversight to keep these things running.
Yep, and I can imagine that's, no matter what, the labor shortage isn't going to go away, right? If they've got, 4 or 5 people working on a mulch line, we bring in one of our systems, they still need somebody to run it, like you said. So, what do you think in terms of how we help these customers? Um, do you think that we can do in the future to even further solve for that labor gap, right? When we're talking 10 years from now, do you see the industry going to you know no humans required at all? What do you think, where do you think the industry's going?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I'd probably be a lot richer than I am right now. So, with that said, Josh, it's really tough to do that forecast for you. Things have just, like we just said, have come so far since 1975. It's just almost impossible to think where we're going to be in 10 more years. I see, just at Nova, our engineering staff is just, to me, is outstanding in what they're coming up with controls. So I think what's going to happen, I think the machinery, as far as the robots, they probably will gain more speed, but more than likely the control end of it, the simplifying controls and making it easier for the operators, so can even cut the amount of operators you have now down to one person a line, rather than having 2 or 3 people still a line on an automatic system. So I think that's what's going to actually happen is it's going to be simplified even more, so that you can run a 6 line system in a plant. You probably won't have more than 10 people in that plant at all. That's kind
Yep.
of what I'm seeing.
Yeah. And you talked about the palletizing side with the robots being a little faster. How about on the form fill side? Where do you see that going? Because obviously, they can only palletize as fast as you can bag, right? So what are you seeing out there on the bagging side?
Well, that's a great question. The bagging side of it, it takes a certain amount of time for gravity to take hold for that mulch or soil product to fall in the bag. So unless some other system that comes up that can actually accelerate that material in the bag, you're going to be looking at a certain amount of product. But right now, we at Nova can do somewhere between 28 and 30 bags per minute on a 2 cubic foot mulch bag, and that's going to be about the peak of it, unless we come up with some provisions to make and accelerate the product in the bag faster. That bag rate is going to be where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think you'll see, and also too, right? There comes a time when, you only need so many bags, right? So even if someone's running 2 bagging machines into one palletizer or something like that, at some point you, maybe they're only running for, less hours, right? Maybe they're not running 24/7. Maybe they're not running 2 shifts. Maybe they can do all that they need in one shift, right? Is that something that you kind of see maybe happening?
Well, that's a good possibility. Right now, we basically have 2 bagging systems. One with a form fill and seal feeding a robot, which at this particular time the robots are pretty limited to the 24 bags per minute. We also have the FFS line with a conventional palletizer, which uh, allows us to probably fill and stack and palletize and wrap, like I said, up to 30 bags per minute. And it can go, depending on the bag size, it could go a little further. But I just, I, one thing about what Nova has done is they have perfected pretty much that a form fill and seal can do what the fastest palletizer we've got will do. So they match.
Yep.
There's no backup. Like if FFS can produce 30 bags per minute, but our palletizers can't do but 15. So that's one thing that we have I think, strive to do in Nova is to produce a system that can work really close with each other and get the maximum production off that line.
Yeah, and I think the one thing too, thinking about our equipment, is we can really help out with the entire line, right? We're coming in, we can provide the bagging equipment, we can provide the palletizer, we can provide the wrapper. How big of an advantage is that for you when you're out there selling these systems in a competitive landscape? Like the pun there, but how much does that help you to say, hey, we've been doing bagging systems, palletizers, and wrappers for 20 plus years?
It's a big advantage when it comes to selling systems. Uh, for instance, if my customer decides and signs the dotted line, he's buying the whole system from us. So we provide him with all the drawings necessary, and he can get his plant ready. He can get his electrical drops, his air drops in place. So when our trucks show up with all the equipment from our company, whether, like you said, the hoppers, the conveyors, the FFSs, the palletizers, the wrappers, everything's sitting on the yard, and we start putting it together like a puzzle. And we only have one team. It'd be one team from Nova, and of course we work with the customers to install these systems. So it's a giant puzzle that goes together quick. So basically, once everything is on the yard and the customer's ready, one of our systems can be installed in basically 2 days. It takes a while to wire it up. After that, it's quick disconnects, but you have to wire it up. You have to hook it up to a computer. They have to do the pre-start. So the whole system installation, startup, and training, you're looking at probably 2 to 4 weeks. If depending on how much product, how many SKUs the customer's going to run. If he has 2 SKUs, we can do it in a day. But most of them have, they'll have 15, 20 SKUs. So we like to run every SKU a half a day to put it in the machine, get it set up, get the recipe set up, so it's always there when he wants to go back to it.
Yep.
So it can last up to a month easy.
Yeah. Well, in your industry in particular too, I'm just, sitting here thinking about it, the customers that we have that are repeat customers, there are people that have been working with you and Voit, Voit, our director of engineering, since the company started. Right. And that's, you just don't hear about that, anymore. Right. It's one of those things where you could say, like, I know that a Nova system is going to work because I had a Zygot system, right? And that was our first name. Or,
right.
How many times do we get calls that say, hey, I got this Zygot system. Here's the serial number. Can you help me out? I mean, that's just a testament to Voit and really yourself and in our industry, or in your industry, to, a testament to Nova's equipment.
Well, I think you're certainly right. And thinking back on the question you asked me about the advantages of making the whole system, upon startup, like I said, you have one team from Nova and the customer. I have been on startups in the past that wasn't necessarily true. You would have FFS from one company, you'd have a wrapper from one company, you'd have a palletizer from one company, and then you have all kinds of tech showing up, and of course the cost accelerates when you have all these different people from these different companies showing up. So one manufacturer is ideal. In '95, when Nova or Zygot actually started, it was kind of a deal between Voit and I. Of course, he was a startup guy. At that time, I was selling and installing and doing all kinds of things. But I know for the first several years at Nova, when I'd sell a machine for them, then I would go and install it, and Voit would come start it up, and we'd have these things running in a week.
Yep.
And I don't think anybody's ever touched that.
No, and you're still quoting these systems today, right? So you've been able to see our system, our equipment evolve over the years. I think that's a real advantage to, somebody coming in, every couple of years and saying, okay, how can we make this better? Or, things like that, because you've been out there, you've installed it. So that really helps take a lot of the friction out of our process, our sales process, right? Because the owners of these mulch and soil companies, they're talking to you, and you can talk right with them because you've been in the industry for just as long, and in many cases, and I think that's a real testament of why this industry has been so important to our company over the years. So yeah, like you said, I think it's a huge advantage for us.
I definitely think so. That's one thing that I think that Nova, or Zygot and Nova, have listened to the techs in the field. They've listened to me in the past, and when palletizers or systems first were installed, there was a lot of hardwiring that had to be done,
Hmm.
and that would take days and days and weeks to hardwire a whole system in the field. And with myself working with Voit closely, I was expressing the thoughts of having to make it simple, and that's another thing that Nova has done. Just every year try to make things simpler,
Yep.
and as you know, right now, we'll probably get into it a little later, but we have updated all of our control systems on our machinery, and that's going to be just one heck of a boost for us, I believe, making everything more accurate, uh, user friendly. I think it's going to just be a big improvement for us.
Yeah, and let's talk about controls for a little bit. So, like you said, we've updated the control system to make it easier and user friendly. How big is that going to be for our customers who, they might have 4 or 5 different operators, throughout the year, right? Because, like you said in the beginning, it's hard to keep labor. So, between something like our updated control system, and then you put NovaSight on top of that, which is our augmented reality service product. I mean, that's something that I think should really separate us and be a big deal for your end customers as well, in terms of getting up to speed with running the equipment.
Yeah, well, the control system that we're installing on our machines now, they've got pictures for people that don't read English or Spanish or whatever it may
Hmm.
be, what case it may be. So a lot of times on our screens, you can go and look at a picture and it basically explains you how to do it. So that's going to simplify things quite a bit for the operators. I think that's going to be a huge advantage in building pallets or building setting measurements for the FFS to drop or the volumetric failure to drop. All that's just going to be much simpler without having to go through a lot of different screens to make all this happen. It's going to be basically, I believe it's going to be right in front of you. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to just be a great benefit to the people that decide to buy Nova, and with the operators they have to hire to run them.
Yep. And between that and the data that we can provide, right? I know, Adam and the controls team, they're always trying to give more data to the end user, and be able to tie into those SCADA systems that'll, show how many bags an hour they're doing. If they're on par, it'll be green. If not, it'll be red, like all that good stuff. I think that'll only help, right? And further help, us to, either fine tune our equipment even more, or help the end customer to say, okay, well, maybe the issue is upstream a little bit, right?
Right. Uh, some of the real benefits of the system are going to be actually each machine, whether it be the FFS or palletizer or wrapper, is going to have its own parts book right on the screen. So you can pull up the parts right there. You don't lose parts book. You can't find the manual. It's already on the screen. And the maintenance on that machine is going to be written right out in front of you. What needs to be done, tells you when to do it. So yes, it's just going to be a big benefit for the end user to be able to operate these machines.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's spend a little bit of time on and talking about some of those early systems that you quoted. One of the cooler parts of my job is getting those forms that say, "Hey, here's what we're trying to do." Right, and not most of the time, or a lot of the time, it's a mulch and soil lead that I'm passing along to you that says, "Hey, we're trying to do X, Y, and Z." Right. What did that look like in '95? We could start there and then, get into, a new system, right? What does that look like? So, starting with some of those first systems that you quoted, what were these owners of mulch and soil companies asking you to do?
Well, again, first thing was to eliminate labor, or
Yep.
not only eliminate it, but replace labor, or giving them an alternative to use rather than having to hire people to run the machines. But at that time, in prior to 1995, you would see a very, very, very limited number of palletizers. You would see, you wouldn't even see a FFS. If you did, it was in experimental stages. So 95 was probably the year everything just exploded in automation. And that's basically when Zygot, or now Nova, started just making palletizer. That was the only thing they made for the first 3 or 4 years was palletizer. So when a customer would come to me, he knew nothing about automation. So we would tell him what he could do for them, and their eyes just got bigger and bigger, and saying, "You mean you can do this? You can do that?" And yeah, we can do that. So basically, most of the automation started then with people still manually bagging, but it was going to an automatic stacking machine, or a conventional palletizer, we call it. And then at that time, it was the product was taken off by forklifts and moved to a wrapper. So eventually, as time went by, Nova just kept building different parts of the system. So now, when we go to talk to a person, it's a totally different thing. We're telling him that all he has to do basically is dump the hopper, or the front end loader with mulch into a hopper, and when it comes out the other end wrapped, that's all you basically have to worry about. And in between there, you've got 2 or 3 people overseeing the line. So going from a manual system, or even to a semi-automatic system that had, as much as 8 people on the line, now we're down to 1 or 2 at the most. So the efficiency has allowed these guys to basically stay in business.
Yep.
The price of machinery, everything else has gone up, but unfortunately for these guys, the price of mulch is almost the same as it was 25 years ago. So
Sure.
that's forced them to be manufacturers to get better, and basically forced them into buying automatic systems so they can produce them at low numbers, low
Yep.
cost.
And I think you bring up a good point there. You talk about manual systems, semi-automatic, and fully automatic. So one of the things that I notice that comes across, my email all the time with these form submissions is, hey, we're doing this all manually, right? Whether it's a municipality somewhere that's trying to, they're going to start making mulch, or, they're going to start bagging mulch. When do you, when you're talking to these companies, when does it make sense to move from manual to semi-automatic, and then when does it make sense to go from semi-automatic to fully automatic?
Another great question. And there's a lot of factors involved in that.
Mhm.
Normally, if somebody would come to me and said, "I want to put an automatic packaging system in," uh, what what is going to justify me doing that? Well, normally you would say you need to produce about 2 million bags of mulch a year
Mhm.
to justify the cost, and getting your payback on your machine. Uh, but there's a lot of factors involved in that. The labor pool. I'm sorry about my dog. The labor
No
pool
worries.
is going to play a big factor. If you can get labor, then maybe you can go manual. But if you can't get labor, you're forced into automation. I mean, I've kind of lost my train of thought. My dog barking, but uh, what was I going to say? I'm sorry, I've lost my mind.
Oh,
What was the
good.
question you asked me again, please?
So when does it make sense? So if
Oh,
we're
okay. I'm sorry.
yep, from
Related
manual to
to cost
semi-automatic
of
to
the product.
automatic.
I mean,
Hmm.
if you're selling a product like mulch that goes in a bag, and the bag is selling for, let's just say, $3,
Hmm.
that's one thing. But if you're selling a high-ended product, it could be anything from sugar salt to mulch or soil or value-added soil products, you could get $12 a bag. So if you're getting $12 a bag, you can afford an automatic system better if you can at $2 a bag. So it's a lot of things involved, and it makes up the, the reason why you can afford it. But normally, if I go to a customer and sit down with the customer, I'm asking him how much is production this year. Is he producing 2 million bags, 1 million bags? So I start there, and then we identify his product. We identify if it's mulch, if it's soil, if it's both, if it's a value-added product, if he's got a blending system. All those things we kind of put that in the recipe to finally come up with an answer for him if he can get his return on his investment with a $900,000 bagging system, say.
Sure. And those margins are razor thin, right? In the mulch world. In
the mulch world, they're razor thin, and some it's like I say, you have to put out a lot of numbers to make it work.
Yep. Yeah, I know for a couple of times we get a few calls of whether it's a municipality or some other operation where they're like, oh, we bag a couple months out of the year, right? That's probably not going to cut it for an automatic system, but does it make sense for them maybe to go to a semi-automatic system? Because if they do, they do it a couple months a year and they do it for the next 50 years, or let's say 30, does it make sense to kind of go to semi-automatic there, or is it still manual?
Again, that's it's a fine line sometimes.
Yep.
Manual systems, just from my perspective, is selling over the last 5 years. I probably sold one manual system in the last 5 years, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe 100 or so automatic systems. But there's still a place for it. However, I don't run across it very much. People have made a lot of mistakes in buying manual systems and it don't quite pan out. You have to have an investment to have a building to put these things in. So once you put all that cost together with the system, with the building, installation, you're pretty much forced to bag more than 2 or 3 months a year. And if you don't, then I'm not sure that's the right way to go. And maybe you might need to be contracting somebody to bag for it.
Yep.
So it's a lot of ways to look at that, but certainly the way to start, if you've got any inkling of getting into the industry, is what could be a manual system, and you can always upgrade it. So start the system out with a design. So if you got a manual system this year, and 2 years from now you want to put an FFS in it, you can slip that in. And then 2 years later you want to slip an automatic palletizer in. So you just build on that. So when from start day one to maybe year 8, you've completed and put in a whole automatic system.
Yep. Yeah, and you brought up a good point there. If you're only bagging a couple months a year, maybe you got to start bagging for someone else, right?
That's right.
How often does that happen, right? If you've got somebody who's only bagging a couple months out of the year, maybe they know a few other people who are bagging a couple months of the year, and then they try to, keep that machine running. And then on the flip side of that, a lot of customers in whether it be the mulch and soil world, there are some big players out there, right? Like the Old Castles of the world and companies like that. How often do you see those bigger companies then come in and say, okay, we're going to, buy up, mom and pops 1, 2, and 3, who are ready to retire or something like that, and then all of a sudden they invest in new equipment, or they bring those operations into another plant. That was probably a long question, but
I understand.
Yep.
But co-packing is big. There's a lot of co-packers out there. Even though you big companies like you mentioned, Oldcastle or Scott's or whoever it could be, even though they have multiple plants themselves, there is such a demand for the product that co-packing still is very, very doable for a lot of people. So you take a mom and pop that's operating in there, and they're struggling to get along, and then a big company comes in and contracts them to fill 1 million bags for them. That's huge.
Mhm.
It just lets them stay in business to co-pack, which they may not be making big bucks on, but at least it helps keep the door open so they can make the profit on what they bag and sell themselves.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, co-packing it seems like it's big in every industry right now. So and it certainly helps with automation, right? And another example of having that one manufacturer, right? Working with somebody like us here at Nova is, that the flexibility that we provide and the flexibility that our equipment can provide, right? If you come in and you say, hey, I've got this new product that I want to run, okay, now you're dealing with the same person for the bag, the same person for the palletizing, and the same person for the wrapping, right? It's not, you got to go out and make sure, hey, is this bag going to run in the form fill? Are we going to have any problems palletizing this bag? All that kind of stuff. I think that's a big advantage as well.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. That's hard to expand on that, but it's
Yep.
it just makes it a lot more affordable for the mom and pop out there today
Yep.
to continue bagging.
Yeah. And one question I wanted to ask you too is, you were just at the Mulch and Soil Council meeting last month. What's the outlook industry wide, right? Whether it be from the manufacturers that provide equipment like us, or the end users, the customers. What's the outlook overall for the industry?
Well, in talking with my customers that showed up this year at the Mulch and Council show, I think most of them are looking at a little softer year uh, than we had in the past. But with the economy like it is, we've always, I say we, the industry, I think as a whole, since I've been involved with it, kind of looks itself as a recession-proof industry. I mean, if things are good, everything's flourishing, people going on vacation, people working in the yards, everything's good anyway. But when the economy uh, is kind of in tough shape like it is right now, and the dollars are not available sometimes for these customers to go out and travel and see the world, but they decide to stay home, and then when they stay home, they work in the yard. So the money we're spending on traveling and vacationing, now they're spending on beautifying their yard. So the industry is kept up by that. So even though sales may not be as great, it provides enough business for the customers to survive another year and keep going. So I think the overall census this year was, hey, it may not be a great year, but I think everything is going to be fine.
Yep. Cool. And then, not to put you on the spot, but I was doing some quick math there. So 1975 was, 48 years ago, right? So in your 48 years of experience in this industry, what's the, one or two things that you've really taken away, from your customers, or just about the industry in general? What's, one thing that's really stuck with
That's another question you throw at me here.
you?
Well, the one thing that I have to say is just the growth in the industry. It's just phenomenal where it was in 1975. It was, there was a company called Pioneer Southern at that time, which probably was the largest mulch producing company in the United States at that time. And they had like 9 plants. And most of them were on the east, the eastern half of the United States. And now you've got so many companies out there now that they own 6 plants. Uh, and one of the biggest pleasures I've had in the last 48 years, you said, it was when I would go and make a call on a customer that never bagged a bag of mulch or soil, sit down with him in his garage, in his house, and talk about the industry and what he wanted to do. And then they bought a system. Then they bought a second system. And then they bought a third system. And then he started another plant and another plant. So it was just a joy to see how people started out in 75 and where many of them are today. It's been a good ride to see it happen to a lot of good friends over the years to be able to build a heck of a business.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one of the fun things about this podcast is I like to end the podcast talking about something other than mulch and soil or bagging or case palletizing. Um, what's Van like to do outside of work? I know that you're a golfer. What else? What else does Van like to do?
Cook.
Cook.
I like to
What's your
cook.
favorite thing to cook?
Yeah,
I've known you for like 4 years now, and I did not know that you like to cook. I feel
love to cook. Yeah, I have
how do I not know that?
well, you never visited my home yet, so maybe one of
That's
these
true.
days we're only about 2 hours apart, but we don't get to
Yeah.
see much of each other. We stay busy, but yeah, I basically am an ex golfer. In my opinion, there's two things don't go together: golf and old. So, and I've reached the old part, so the golfing is getting few and far between. But I built in my backyard. I built up a big patio and a big pergola, and under my pergola, I have a smoker, I have a griddle, and I have a grill. So depending on what we're cooking, which one I'm going to use. But
Yeah.
I love smoking pork shoulders or Boston butts. That's one of my favorite things to do. This slow cooking, and I think I have a damn pretty good barbecue.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that Carolina barbecue, right? So are you using the Carolina barbecue, vinegar based sauce, or do you make your own barbecue sauce?
Basically I make my own. But most of it is just the way I put the rub on it, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use a lot of spices on mine. I just use the natural flavor of the meat.
Yep.
What I do is basically I do make a rub, but I'm not going to tell you that my secret ingredients. But it's not a lot of vinegar involved in it.
You use mulch?
I slow cook it like you do when you cook in barbecue, or at 225 for about 12 hours. And when I open that up and then I put my secret sauce on it and close it back up and cook it for another hour. And then when you open it up, you just pull it apart with a fork. It's so tender.
Oh, that sounds
And
good.
I use sweet chips like apple chips or cherry flavored chips. I don't like the strong flavors of like hickory or oak or something like that.
Yeah. Well, who knew? I had no idea that you were such a barbecue connoisseur. So I will, I think if I leave now, I could get there by dinner time.
Well, you better wait till tomorrow morning because it won't be ready till tomorrow morning.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess we don't want any midnight barbecue. So
well, it's always a good time to get the food on the grill and then have the fun time.
Oh yeah. And if I remember correctly, you live on a golf course, so you get that smoker going. You sit outside with a couple of drinks and just let that smoker go all day. That's a day it's hard to beat.
I live on the 13th hole. I don't know if that's good or bad, but the green is right behind my house, and I got my outdoor TV up there, so we're set. So
there you
go.
You're
invited anytime to come.
Well, the next time we'll do the next one in person, and we'll smoke some meats while I'm down there. I think that's a good idea.
Smoke some meat and a cigar and have a cocktail.
There we go. We'll celebrate our big years, right?
Yeah. Look forward to it.
And hey, before we leave, tell us a little bit about your dog. So I know the pup made an appearance. So
was barking. Yeah, I hate the intrusions like that, but we are a family that loves Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. That is they're the sweetest dogs I've ever had in my life, and I've had a bunch. And we lost one about 2 years ago, and we finally got the nerve up to buy another one. And she's a stinker. I mean, she's a lap dog. I mean, that's what they are. They just stay in your lap constantly. They're the sweetest things. You can have children around them. You don't have to worry about a thing. They'll love you with kindness. That's one thing about a Cavalier.
That's great. What's her name?
Stella.
Stella. Oh, that's sweet.
She's sweet.
Cool. Well, yeah. So the next episode that we do together, we'll have Stella on, and we'll sit in the backyard there. We'll watch everybody miss the green, and laugh about it,
Yes.
and have some cigars and smoke some meat, and we'll make everybody jealous out there on YouTube. So,
Look forward to it.
well, thank you very much, Van. I appreciate it, and looking forward to next time.
Yeah, buddy. Take care.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
That was episode number 4 of the NOVAcast. Hard to believe we're already at number 4. Stay tuned next week. We'll have another guest on. And if you'd like to be a guest, hit me up, josh.horton at novaautomation.com. So, yeah, we'd love to have you. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening.